And here we are, officially in a bear market, down 20% on the S&P from the all-time high. And I'll tell you what, there's more pain to come. We're going to get into all of it. This is a total disaster in the making. Meanwhile, another disaster in the making is on pause. The Government Disinformation Board has officially been put on pause. Nina Jankowicz, the woman who was running it all, has resigned. She's not very happy. She's spouting off to CNN. The mainstream media is out defending her. We're going to talk all about it because you know what? The government should not be deciding what information you get to see, read, and hear. That's just not right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Trish Regan Show. I am Trish. A quick reminder that portions of today's program are brought to you by Legacy Precious Metals. There's never been a better time to invest in precious metals than right now. So go to legacypminvestments.com for more. Again, that's legacypminvestments.com for more. I'm going to talk a little bit more about gold coming up. But first, wow. I'm also going to, by the way, talk about Nina Jankowicz. But again, we got to get to this news on the market because it shouldn't be this way. All right, if anyone in Washington, D.C. had half a brain over at the Federal Reserve or in the White House, we wouldn't be in the situation we are in. Have I not been warning about this ad nauseum for like the last year and a half, certainly since summer of 2020? I guess it's actually almost 2 years now. I told you, if you keep printing money, if you keep handing out checks, if you keep trying to put forward stimulus, as Joe Biden did, $1.9 trillion worth, when he came to office, if you keep doing this, you will have mass inflation, the likes of which we've never quite seen. We're now at the highest level in 40 years, but just you wait. I have predicted double-digit inflation on consumer prices, and I stand by that. I also want to point out that gas prices, which are currently at an all-time high, could double by the height of the summer driving season, given everything that's happening. And there you get the Federal Reserve running to try and chase this thing. Runaway inflation is a very hard thing to catch. And so now they're raising rates as fast as they can. They'll probably ultimately overdo it, and that will send us into a recession. I mean, 85% chance, that's what I'm saying right now, of recession by the end of this year. So it's natural that the market would sell off. This bear market is actually totally a logical one. And I've called them out when they're not logical. You know that. During COVID, I said this market is way oversold, because I knew that there was a path forward. I mean, it wasn't all over. But in this case, the certainty, the transparency just isn't there because the Fed has already done everything that it can do, right? The federal government is doing everything it can do. By the way, they'd like to do a whole lot more, which would cause even more inflation because they just don't get it. Anyway, you get the consumer scaling back. That's what we saw reflected in earnings this week. And consequently, I think you're seeing evidence of a slowdown. So a slowdown typically means a bear market. Look, I don't know when we've ever had a recession and not had a bear market, right? That's how these things work. And as they start, they can often get worse. I look to the VIX quite often. This is the measurement of volatility in the markets, the volatility index. And what we're seeing right now is that it's high, but it's not really, really high. I mean, it's up around 30. It's been in the high sort of 20s this week and 30, which is why I haven't seen that conviction, right, to go back in, because to me, this thing is going to get worse before it gets better. I like the VIX to be up around 34. That tells me there's a lot more fear in the marketplace. When you have that much fear, typically the market is oversold. But I think with what we saw just this week, the market's not yet done. There will be more pain to come. So while I say sharpen your pencils, also be logical about what you're going into. I like to tell you guys what I do in my own personal accounts, just for what it's worth, went into the XLF. This is the Consumer Staples Index, tepidly today. I do think it's possible this one has some more downside to come, but given the earnings results that we saw this week and the pessimism out there surrounding the consumer, I thought it was an attractive vehicle to be in. In terms of the overall market, though, I do think you need to wait a few days or a few weeks and see how this shakes out. The reality is this: no one in Washington gets it. And by no one, I mean no one in the White House and no one at the Federal Reserve. They don't understand that their policies have massive implications that then lead to poor American citizens. I mean, that's the reality of it, right? When you have this much inflation and wages aren't keeping up with inflation, then people have less money to spend. It's just what happens. And yet none of them understand this. And this is what's so mind-boggling. I want to share with you a clip. This was recorded at a Rotary Club meeting back in September of 2021. This is the chairman of the House Budget Committee, who seems to think that all you have to do if you need money is go to the Treasury Department and say, we need money, and they write a check and it's all okay because you know what? It's just monopoly money. Who cares, right? Watch.
We don't have to balance our checkbook. We are like the banker in Monopoly. We create the money, we hand out the money, everybody else plays the game with it.
I'm laughing, but I shouldn't be laughing. I should really be crying, okay? That is the chairman of the House Budget Committee saying we are like the banker in Monopoly. You know, we create the money, everybody else just plays the game with it. That is the level, folks, of stupidity. We have this representative from Kentucky, a Democrat, who thinks he can print money. This is the stupidity that's governing our country. And this is the reason why you are paying more at the gas pumps, and you'll continue to pay more. This is why it costs more to feed your family. We won't even get into the baby formula supply shortage, which is a total mess that should have been dealt with far earlier on. We have stupid people in Washington, D.C. that affect really big policies like our economy, like our national security. And this is a challenge. Look, I say this bear market has just begun because I do believe that we are going to be in recession. I have predicted 85% chance of recession by the end of this year. A lot of investment banks have come out and made similar predictions. Nobody, I don't think, is as high as 85%, but you've seen people say 40% chance of recession. Deutsche Bank recently said we would have a mild recession. Then they amended that a few weeks later to say, no, the U.S. is going to have a major recession, although they believe it's going to be next year. Goldman Sachs also believes it's going to be late next year. I actually think it's far earlier than that. I think it's on the horizon in the here and now. And I think that we all need to be prepared for what will come, certainly in terms of our portfolios, certainly in terms of our lives, because this is at this point kind of unstoppable. I mean, you got a Federal Reserve that's raising rates at a record rate, right? The fastest they can after having left them so low. You got a government that still wants to print more money. This is a problem. And then you get stupid people like Representative Yarmouth who thinks it's one big giant game of Monopoly. I mean, I don't know what to say other than no, it's not Monopoly. It is real money. It does have value. And the more you guys keep printing like this, the more you're going to inflict pain on everyday Americans. So look, watch the markets right now. Watch them very, very carefully. I do think there's going to be good opportunities in the near future if you're a long-term investor to be tiptoeing in, but just be extremely cautious. I can't emphasize that enough. And when I say be really, really cautious, I'm a big believer in having part of your portfolio in gold. In fact, I do think that you want anywhere from 1% to 5% consistently held in assets like gold. I mean, I'll just say it. I think that is really a worthwhile strategy and one that I've certainly employed. I encourage you to look at gold right now because it's trading around $18.30 an ounce, which is a pretty good price. When you hear people like Representative Yarmouth talking like they're talking, you know that the long-term trajectory of this country, unfortunately, from a sort of basic economic perspective, isn't great. Now, gold actually traded up on Friday, which I think is really interesting in light of the U.S. dollar trading up as well. We are practically at parity with the euro, which is really interesting, right? The U.S. dollar just keeps getting stronger because people are kind of psyched about the raising rates. And yet, typically, you would see gold go down. Gold would go down when the U.S. dollar appreciates. Gold is, of course, priced in dollars. But people are concerned, and they have every right to be concerned. And so they're fleeing to those safe havens. Again, I like having some safe havens there in my portfolio. That's important to me. So I encourage you to take a look at it. And when you do, call my friends over at Legacy Precious Metals. It's a great, great team. They're a family-run business, and they will hook you up. They will help you out, I promise. You're welcome to use my name, of course. LegacyPMInvestments.com is their website. Their number is 1-866-589-0560, 1-866-589-0560. So make sure you are protected. Turning now to the Government Disinformation Board, which has been put on pause. That is the best news of the week, I'll tell you. I certainly consider it that way because I'm a big believer in the government not deciding what is real and what's not real. I think sometimes, you know what, the truth can be pretty darn messy. And you've got to hear a lot of different perspectives in order to really get it, right? And so that's so important, so critical. And the idea that the government wants to take our taxpayer dollars to shut down information that they don't think is real or oversaturate, I guess, with the stuff that is real, or perhaps even, dare I say, pressure big tech companies to say, well, you know what, we don't want this, we do want that. I mean, they've been doing that. Let's be very, very clear. So I think it was natural and understandable that many Americans were offended by this whole idea of a government disinformation board. But there are some out there that are quite disappointed that it's over. And Nina Jankowicz, who was the woman who was going to be in charge of this whole thing, or she briefly was, for a few weeks, she's pretty upset. She's pretty upset because she thinks that, we needed this. And so she told CNN, and I quote, "Unfortunately and ironically, we were undone exactly by a disinformation campaign coming from folks who apparently want to put our national security behind their own personal political ambitions." Wow, that's really quite something. I mean, the problem with Nina Jankowicz running this whole thing, the whole thing has a problem. We're going to get to that in a second. But the problem with her running it is that you kind of needed someone who was really above board, like squeaky, squeaky clean. That wasn't too opinionated out there on Twitter, because this woman had quite a track record. And you want to talk about misinformation or disinformation. Case in point, she was tweeting about how the Hunter Biden laptop was just Russian disinformation. It wasn't true. Turns out, well, actually, the laptop was true, and that's now been verified by the likes of the Washington Post and the New York Times, after the election, of course. And then you had her also complaining about too many people wanting masks at a time when Dr. Fauci, Anthony Fauci, because we know, he's absolutely the truth, Dr. Fauci went on 60 Minutes and said, no, you don't need a mask, that masks really don't make a difference. Well, we now know, you know what, that was false, but he was saying that at the time because he had a different objective, a different motive. He was trying to hoard and save all the masks for the hospital personnel, which he later admitted. And yet, at the time, Ms. Jankowicz was out there tweeting about sort of how silly it was that all these people were hoarding masks. So the point being that she, of all people, should not have been running the Government Disinformation Board. Let me just also say, there should not be a Government Disinformation Board. You can massage things along the way. I get that they want to get their message out, right? And there's probably a strategic national interest in getting certain messages out. But part of what they were trying to do was curb the quote-unquote disinformation, specifically for a political group that's very valuable to them. They said they wanted to stop the disinformation that was being disseminated within the Hispanic community. Well, you see, the reason for that is because the Hispanic community has suddenly gotten more and more conservative. Apparently, they're not wild about these policies that the Democrats have employed, including this open border stuff, because guess what? It hits them in their communities pretty darn hard. They don't want violence in their communities, so they actually do believe in police. So defund the police is not going to work with Hispanics. In terms of the illegals coming to the country, for those Hispanics that are here legally, that's actually difficult for them in terms of their own wages and what they might see in their communities. So I understand and empathize with the fact that many Hispanics are saying, wait a second, maybe this is not for me. Democrats are upset about it, and they want to target them because they say, well, they're getting all this disinformation and we use our taxpayer dollars to do it. I don't think so. This thing needs to be buried. It needs to be put away for good. Should not be on pause. I don't think any of us want to see this Government Disinformation Board come back. They don't like that there were these comparisons to the Ministry of Truth. I don't know. What else do you guys want to call it? The government's going to decide what we can hear, what we can't hear. You're going to decide what's real, what's not. It seems pretty Orwellian to me. Anyway, the Washington Post came out with a big, big article totally defending the disinformation board and defending Nina Jankowicz, all this stuff, basically saying that she was the victim of a right-wing internet attack. It's pretty amazing. You should check the article out. I will tell you this. There are also left-wing political attacks. The Washington Post writes, Jankowicz's experience is a prime example of how the right-wing internet apparatus operates, where far-right influencers attempt to identify a target, present a narrative, and then repeat mischaracterizations across social media and websites with the aim of discrediting and attacking anyone who seeks to challenge them. It also shows what happens when institutions, when confronted with these attacks, what happens to them if they don't respond effectively. And certainly they did not respond effectively. Remember, Mayorkas admitted that he never vetted her. I mean, somebody should have at least looked at her Twitter account, I guess, before putting her forward. But what they also say, and this is interesting, is they say these smear attacks leveled by bad faith, right-wing actors, remember, those conservatives, those very, very, very bad conservatives, against a deeply qualified expert and against, oh, forgive me, this is the White House saying this, not the Washington Post, although they go on to echo it in different ways. The White House press secretary, Andrew Bates, said that all these smears against a deeply qualified expert, they are just disgusting. Look, then you got the Washington Post joining in saying harassment and reputational harm is core to this attack strategy, which they say is employed by the right wing. They put in place, they say, campaigns invariably, starting with identifying a person that they characterize as a villain, attacking faceless institutions they write is difficult, so a figurehead, almost always a woman or person of color, is found to serve as its face. Whether that person has actual power within the institution is often immaterial. By discrediting those made to represent institutions they seek to bring down, they discredit the institution itself. You know what? I don't entirely disagree with that. I'm going to say that, but I don't think that that is specific to conservatives. I think that that happens on both sides. Heck, I was pretty much a victim of that. The left went after me in a vicious, horrible way, right? On social media, in all these ridiculous left-wing articles, they went after me because I dared to say that COVID had been politicized, which, let's face it, that seems like a tame thing to say right now. Anyway, this is perhaps what both sides tend to do because it is politics after all. So I would just say this, you know what? Before you come up with some stupid idea like a government disinformation board, think about it. Think about even the terminology that you're using to describe it and think about how that's going to play in Peoria, as they say. And then think about who you're putting in charge. You don't want somebody who has a history of mis or disinformation herself. That's not going to fly. And don't blame it all on conservatives because, gosh darn it, you guys do the exact same thing. The left is always out there doing the exact same thing. Anyway, let's end on a high note. It's over for now. And hopefully, we'll never return. Quick reminder, I do want you to subscribe to this channel. Hit the bell as well. Do me that favor. Make sure that you're getting the alerts on Rumble or on YouTube, wherever you're watching. Do hit the alerts because, you know, there's a lot of shadow banning, shall we say, these days. And especially with everything I just said, this one will probably definitely get shadow banned. So in order to actually see these things, you need to hit the alerts. Share them with your friends. That's actually really important too. And do me this favor. Go and download the full audio version of this podcast on Apple iTunes or on Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Go to my website, trishintel.com. You can get all your latest news and information there at trishintel.com. And I'd love to have you join me on my Locals platform. We exchange stories, ideas there every day. It's just a terrific group of people, and I'd love to have you there and be part of this team. So go to trishregan.locals.com. You can sign up for free. You can support the show if you would like. We love having you there. So thank you. Have a wonderful weekend, and I'll see you right back here on Monday.